he's yelling at Dad, well, if you want to be a college coach, you better get used to this. And I'm like, I didn't say anything. I probably rolled my eyes or something. And it's one of the few times in my life where someone has spoken to me like that I did not immediately go back and get in their face.
I'm Corey Baldwin.
And I'm Dan Searle. Welcome back to Off the Beaten Path, a podcast for basketball coaches living in obscurity, working in obscurity, and even those who have made it out of obscurity.
It's a place for storytelling, learning, connecting, and food for thought, and also a little food for the belly.
In today's episode, we're joined by Dr. Kris Watkins, teacher and director of Southern Hoops and the JUCO Report, along with his brother, older brother, Holy Innocents Athletics Director, Tony Watkins. Welcome to the pod, guys.
Thanks for having us on.
Glad to be here.
Is this the first time y'all get to be teammates?
We had a men's league we played together a couple times.
What's the age difference? Even though you may not want to tell us, Tony, what's the age difference?
Well, most people see Kris and think he's older than me, but I'm actually 5 years older than him.
Yep.
5 years. All right. So Chris's bald head kind
Well,
of.
the whole year we lived in Carrollton, they let me get into all the bars because they thought I was the older brother until we moved out, and so it was weird.
They would card Tony and not you.
That was a good year. That was a fun time.
All right. Well, let's jump in this thing. You ready, sir? Let's
Ready to go. Let's hear some stories.
All right. So before we get going on y'all two, let's talk about your pops. Kind of a legend in the Atlanta area, especially in Southside of Atlanta. A Lakeshore grad. For those Banneker folks out there that may not even know what Lakeshore is anymore, but I know it merged with something else to form Banneker, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it was one of the ones that formed Tri-Cities. Y'all know that one?
Yeah, it formed Westlake.
I'm all off. Okay, so anyway, so I knew it was kind of on that south side over there. But anyway, I know he played there, and then he also coached there, right?
Yep.
Okay, and he's kind of more known, I guess. I know he played at Oglethorpe, all that stuff. Don't want to leave some stuff out on him, but he's probably most known not just for winning games and changing jobs, which he's been at a lot of places, girls and boys, but he's probably most known for his time at Woodward. And let's kind of go there. We're not only won a lot of games, coached a lot of great players, including Tony, but also, ran all the camps that everybody worked in, 6 degrees of separation. I had a cousin, Clint Satterfield, used to always work them, and a lot of Southside legends. I don't want to do all the talking. I'm going to leave it to y'all, but before I do leave it to y'all, I know all the Southside legends. I want to mention some of them because they listen. Since I'm old, Southside wannabe legend. We had, like Rick Duncan, Rick Moore, Matt Cain, Mark Andrews. I know all those guys used to work, and I'm probably leaving, Mark Carroll, probably leaving some good ones out. But go ahead and jump in, and you guys take over and tell us a little bit about Pops.
Well, kind of going back to that time, that era in the 80s and 90s, there still is a lot of great ball on the South Side. A lot of those folks that you mentioned, Matt Cain, Mark Andrews, Clint Satterfield, Chuck Miller, I mean, they were kind of our family all summer because there would be 3 or 4 weeks of camp at Woodward at the time, Superstar Camp. Mm-hmm. And anybody, kind of like Clayton State back when you were running those camps, Corey, anybody with a team was coming to that camp. That's back when Westover, Monroe, We Were Good, Westlake, Carver Columbus, Jonesboro, anybody with a team that could play was coming to that camp. And you play 3 games a day. And by the end of the day on Thursday, you could barely walk because you were so sore, and it was physical, and it was just regular guys calling the games. But Dad, I think the special piece about Dad, Mark Andrews, all those guys, they were old school guys, but it was a lot of fun to play for them. We enjoyed going to practice and obviously playing in games, and they made sports fun. It's a different time now. I mean, those guys, they all probably retired at the right time. because kids today, they weren't going to, they got after us, and Dad's favorite saying was coach them hard, love them hard. And that's kind of how we grew up. And Kris played for him at Shiloh High School, and with the legendary Z-Man. Do you guys know Carl Zimmerman?
Love
At all? Yep.
Love Z.
How was that, Kris?
Well, kind of touch back on like Superstar Camp. You talk about Chuck Miller and the camps, and before we kind of talk about Z, that was such a unique experience there because, I mean, I remember I went to Superstar Camp in like 7th grade. So that was I think from like just a cool experience. You're watching the varsity team play, you're in middle school, and that camp, there were just so many people there and so many teams, and you're watching all those and that game experience. And I remember being a little kid, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and whatever the shoes were, whether it was sponsored by Converse or LA Gear to get the new shoes.
Spot built.
Yeah. I mean, I don't ever remember, paying for shoes ever. And so that was always a cool experience. And then when kind of Dad made that shift to Shiloh and playing with Coach Zimmerman, to say that me and Coach Zimmerman had a love-hate relationship would be an understatement, because he knows so much basketball, and where, I tell people so much about Dad. For as many games as he's won, Dad just did such a good job of, whether it's just getting us all to buy in to an idea and, coach us defensively. And it wasn't, we weren't doing as much skill work. We just went out and played and stuff like that. And, you watch Dad kind of go through different, iterations in his coaching style. I remember by the time he coached with Tony at Heritage, and Tony would call me after practice and be like, "Oh my God, like what Dad says is so mean." And I'm like, well, he's adapted a little bit. It went from more of, hey, maybe you MF-er, to, hey, what I'm going to say is not going to sound as bad, but when you really think about it, it's like, oh man, that kind of cuts you to the core. But then you dive on the floor, and he's almost, Corey at Clayton State, he's like diving on the floor with you. And so that kind of, was such a unique experience. And then Z, it's, everything's outside the body pass, or, don't look like somebody shot your dog or something like that. We called them Z-isms. So all of that kind of, I think, shaped, me and what I did in terms of when I started coaching. A lot I got from them. And then kind of the other unique experience about just being around all those guys, whether it was Mark Andrews, Matt Cain, I remember going to the Jonesboro team camp. I think Melvin was probably assistant there, Corey, again, when I'm in like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And just seeing that kind of camaraderie, telling me what it was like, going to Malone's, after a Thursday night at Superstar Camp, and just kind of being around those guys. And you kind of, just the old school guys, there was more a humbleness to it, which maybe is a different than you kind of see now, where everybody's building their brand as they're coaching and things like that. So I kind of miss that old type of setting.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Both of you said something really important. Tony, you said this old crew, right, made sports fun. And Kris, you talked about the buy-in that happened. So your dad was able to get the buy-in, and players will play hard. How did that happen? How was sports fun? How did that buy-in happen with this group of coaches that you're talking about from the Southside?
Well, they all worked together at one point. They knew each other before they got into the business. I think Dad and Mark went to Oglethorpe together. Mac went to Georgia, but somehow they all just started blending in. I think one thing is, they were tough, but everything wasn't serious all the time. And we were allowed to kind of joke around with each other at practice a little bit, where, a lot of times today, it's people are just so serious. I think they obviously taught us more than basketball. And I think one piece, and this is good for what's going on now in the world, all three of those guys could coach white kids, could coach black kids, could coach anybody, and they blended us to where we were just one team, one program, and we were all like brothers when we played. But it was, I remember being hard, but if you get my teammates together, and we get together about once a year, we just tell stories, and that's what we remembered. I don't remember anything about Beowulf, but I remember that time with my teammates and my friends and my coaches, our coaches growing up. It was a positive experience, and I think that's the biggest job of a coach or an AD, is to create the best possible experience for the kids, period. And that means sports are supposed to be fun, and that means making basketball fun.
Let me ask you guys this. I know as we're talking about some of those guys, we mentioned Z, who has a son that currently coaches. We mentioned Chuck Miller, who has a son who coached and is now an athletic director, like yourself, Tony. What made you both of you guys want to get into the quote family business? What was it? Those stories, or was it seeing them work and have fun at the same time? What were some of the things? Just curious.
I think and kind of touch back, I said kind of about Z with kind of that love-hate relationship. It was more me getting mad because he was trying to make me be better, which was frustrating sometimes because, I remember Z would stop practice and say, "Can't you make that pass?" And I'd be like, "Well, yeah, if nobody's moving, but I think I knew Tony was a lot better than I was. And so where I kind of knew my kind of role going into it, especially, Corey, I was your assistant, I think at 21, when my knees got so bad, I really kind of still wanted to be involved. And I think both of us saw ourselves, even when we play, kind of as being leaders, whether it's Tony was dunking and stuff and hitting threes, and I might just be overly dribbling, but I was always going to make sure I was going to win every race. So you were never going to be able to being a coach's son, which I think is unique about our father. And if I talk back to Dad, I remember he'd put my ass on the bench. There was you don't have to edit that out. I mean, I remember a game, I think I tried to split a trap by going behind my back and through my legs, and I got fouled. I turned it over and didn't say anything. I didn't go back in for the next 3 quarters. And so I think that's,
back dribble. Don't split a trap, back dribble.
I mean, I did a lot of ball handling drills. So there was, I think what made it unique for both of us, there never was any of the kind of daddy ball mentality. So, we were held accountable, if not more accountable than anybody else. And I think I kind of knew I wanted to get into coaching. Even my senior year in high school, after my knee was hurt, I coached Shiloh's 8th grade team in AAU. So I kind of knew that I wanted to kind of go that route. I don't know, Tony, when did you decide? I know you kind of did some other things,
I tried to, I think it's funny when you talk about Dad holding us accountable. I didn't start till my senior year. And Kris, did you ever start?
I would have my senior year, and then my knee got bad. So I reluctantly was like, hey, whatever, I'll be 6th, 7th man.
And I remember Dad's, I was confused. We were working on scramble, 2-2-1 press. And I was just confused, thinking we were working on 55 run and jump. And I talked back to Dad. I said, I'm not supposed to do that. And he looked at me and he said, if you say another word, I will smack the out of you in front of my teammates and everybody else. And nobody even blinked. Like, okay, get some water. And that was it. But I didn't, at first I think I kind of fought it for a little bit. I'm like, I'm gonna go try to do something else. But
you insurance salesman? You worked at the Myers?
I had my stockbroker license, but it just wasn't fun for me. And I missed competing. I missed, an opportunity. I wanted to have an opportunity of being a positive influence for young people. Because Kris and I both have pretty interesting stories. None of us were squeaky clean growing up. And, Kris made good grades. I didn't. But, we got in trouble a lot. And so just to kind of make it through.
Tony got in trouble a lot. I got in trouble a couple times.
I got in trouble a lot. But to kind of get through that and grow up and, I think that's something that both Kris and I learned from Dad. I mean, Dad, he wasn't going to write anybody off for getting in trouble, you know, and I think it's I remember one time we're at Superstar Camp, and I think we had some Black and Milds or something, and he just kind of walked in and was like, "Hey, y'all quit smoking those cigars," and that was it, you know. But Corey, you know about them Black and Milds, I'm sure.
Uh-oh.
I've seen them. I don't know about
But I think that having Dad's mentorship for both of us made us both feel like we had a lot to give back to kids and to the game. And so here we are still doing it.
Yeah, you are. Well, let's do this with both of you.
Yeah.
Let's get an abbreviated version. Tony, from those Black and Milds, how'd you get from there to where you are today? Just a quick little resume at a glance, and same with Kris. And then we'll go highlight some of those areas, and we'll focus back in on those first coaching gigs. We know where Kris's was with that Corey Baldwin guy at Truett.
Oh, no, sir. I was Tony's assistant before that.
There you go. That's right. All right. So Tony, where did you go? What was your even the stock market piece and the housing director all the way up to now?
About a year, I got back into coaching a year out of college. And so Kris and I made him come to Carrollton with me, and he was my assistant, and we had no idea what we were doing. I'm 23 years old coaching 18-year-olds. Kris is 18 coaching 18-year-olds. So that from Oak Mountain went to I went back to LaGrange College to be the GA on the men's side over there. And then from there went to Heritage and worked with Dad. And then from there went with Tim Watkins at Parkview, another really good.
Not related.
No relation. Yeah.
No relation. And then it's interesting. I applied for the Holy Innocents boys job, didn't get it. The next year, the girls position came open. And, you know, at that point, I felt I was ready to be as ready as I was going to be a head coach again. Because Kris and I had no idea what we were doing that first year. But I was able to learn a lot from Warren and Dad and Tim, and even Chan Brown, who's the baseball coach at Parkview. I helped him out a little bit, but just on running the program. Came back to Holy Innocents, where I was a head girls coach for 8 years. Left for 2 to run Northside Youth Organization, and now I'm back at Holy Innocents as the AD. This will be my 10th year total here at the school.
There you go. Quite a timeline. Kris, take us through yours briefly, if you would.
Yeah, so my senior year, I'm trying to remember which knee. So my knee was pretty much shot, and I ended up getting like what's pretty much like Tommy John surgery, but to my knee. And so I wasn't even going to go to college. I got that surgery in May. And then I hadn't even applied to college anywhere. And then Tony got the job and says, well, you know, hey, do you want to move to Carrollton? And what I think we kind of left out, Tony lived at home my senior year. And when he was working, and I would look over in the middle of the night, and he's like doing pull-ups on the power tower and dips, and he's playing NCAA football, and he's writing out his recruiting calendar. So we got real tight kind of during that time. So I was like, yeah, this will be awesome. So coach with Tony at Oak Mountain Academy for a year. Had some really fun times at the mansion in downtown Carrollton. And then my best friend Kyle, I had planned to go to LaGrange. Actually got recruited by Daniel Bowles when he was there in high school. But he decided to go to Piedmont, and it's right. Lee Glenn had gotten the job for a year, and after Chris Faulkner left, and they pretty much were bringing in a whole new team. And I'd spent the whole year kind of rehabbing, was playing, out there, West Georgia guys in pickup. I was like, hey, this will be great. Went there, hurt my knee again. And then kind of first year, they kind of more like a student assistant, but by the second semester, I was kind of doing most of our scouting. Did that, was there for 2 years. And then Corey Baldwin got the Truett job. And then what was Corey, you were going to hire Joel, and then Joel ended up getting the Barton job. And
Joel worked for me 12 hours.
Yeah.
He hired him, getting the paperwork ready, and then he went to Barton.
Yeah, and I guess when Corey, when you were interviewing for the job, I was up in Ohio working Mike Helfer's camp with Daniel Bowles, sleeping in an RV, and
Those Helfer camps are fun.
yeah, so
Lots of Bulls references already too.
yeah, and so Corey, you called G, and because I'd actually reached out to Coach G because I was graduating early about trying to go help them at Clayton. And then Corey calls, says, hey, it's kind of serendipitous. Truett, I think, is 8.7 miles from Piedmont. I switched my schedule. I took all night classes the first 8 weeks. So I just had 2 days a week. I had to go to class first semester, coach with Corey for a year. At that point, I was, kind of looking at just the dynamics of college basketball, kind of where I thought I could potentially kind of move up and end up kind of getting out of it. Coach with Dad for a year at North Gwinnett.
Girls, right?
Yeah, girls. That was a fun experience. I think I threw some water bottles and cussed them out in the state tournament game. But that was probably, it was such a fun time to coach, because the one thing about girls, and I know Tony can talk about this, there's not a lot of pushback sometimes in terms of you tell them to do something, they were in there at 5:45 in the morning, every morning doing drills, and then coach with Daniel for a year at South Cobb, and then got the head job at that. I think it was 22. Coached there for 2 years, kind of went through some crazy stuff during the recession where I got rift, reduction in force, and then kind of just all that, dealing with that after that second year, I was kind of done with it. And I was telling Cyril before we got on, have not really kind of had any desire to kind of ever go back and kind of be on the sidelines. So,
but you did still do stuff with basketball though. So now you teach, and what made you start the two organizations you have now? And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, with any of that, there is a component, when we coach, right? Whether it's you're not sleeping, it's the obsessive nature of it. It's the breaking down the film, it's the watching it. I needed something to kind of fill that kind of void, outside of research and history. I need to do something else. So kind of when I started, JUCO Report, and been fortunate enough to, kind of link up with Corey Black with that. And, Daniel Bowles helps with a lot of that as well. And then Southern Hoops Report, to kind of be involved, but be involved in my own terms. So if, I want to work in June, I can. If I don't have to. Whereas when you're a high school coach, you're at team camp and stuff like that.
Right.
And, my wife didn't know me when I coached. And I don't think, well, I know she wouldn't be with me if I was coaching. So now I kind of get to do it on my own terms, which was what I really like.
On your own terms, that's a good way to put it. And you're still involved in the sport you love. For both of you, I'll tell you a brief story of mine. I went from coaching Division I men at Towson to single A girls in Atlanta when I came back and was the AD and girls coach at Galloway. That was a big transition. Both of you have made that transition, coaching guys to coaching the girls teams. What are some of the challenges and what are some of the positives of those switched? Kris, you already hinted at that, the 5:30 in the morning in the gym ready to go, but talk about that transition and some of the things that maybe people who are listening can learn from.
I'll start with this one. It is a big transition. Now, the positive is the fact that I've coached girls allows me to be a better AD, because we just talked about it. If our girls cross country team wins a state title, I'm pumped. And it's helped me to really see the females as athletes. I remember when Dad the first year he goes to North Gwinnett to coach girls, all of us like, what are you doing? But then when you see him coaching these girls up, like, that's pretty cool. I think it's a transition. I do think that there are, and I was lucky to coach some really, really good female players. One's at LSU, one's at NC State. I mean, and when you talk about basketball IQ, Kayla Pointer and Erica Cassell, their basketball IQ is better than any male player that I've ever coached. I think it's harder to get them to play hard. I do. I think girls, they do have to like their coach some. So getting complete buy-in is I don't want to say it's tougher, but it's imperative.
It's an important part, yes.
Yeah, it's imperative. But I think I'm at the point now where I'll watch and I think this is good for me. I'll watch Duke Carolina men, but then I'll watch, LSU and Tennessee women. I am a fan of both. And I think that's probably the biggest positive that I can do is in my current job is to appreciate the girls as much as the guys.
They work just as hard. They're putting in as much
Yep.
time. They're really good athletes who are
Yep.
delivering state championships and earning it every single day. There should not be a difference. You're right. How about you, Kris?
And I have kind of unique before when I kind of got out of coaching, I made a transition and started doing a bunch of media stuff for Brandon Clay at Peach State basketball. So during that time, I was able to kind of see some of those top players, right? Whether it is the Diamond DeShields, or the Kayla Davis, and you kind of see it gives you a different, respect, or even Kayla Pointer, right? And Erica Cassell, a lot of those players that kind of came through Holy Innocents, that I think there is I love watching college basketball, right? I love watching the NBA, but sometimes in the girls, like when it's a really skilled girls player, you're like, wow, that's when they're able to do some of those things because, within sheer athleticism, a lot of times in guys, they may not be as skilled, but maybe they're more highly recruited because they're longer, they're more athletic, they can make plays that other people can't make. But in girls, there's that, the unique skill set, right? Or I remember watching Taya Cooper, and she's up there, and her handle was so good that it was just so fun to watch. But in terms of, kind of coaching girls, sometimes it was funner because when they do buy in, it's just a more kind of joyous experience. It's like, I have a daughter. When she's happy, it's like, oh man, and so when you see that kind of buy-in, and like coaching guys, I love them, but it just, I don't know if their smiles don't seem as happy, or Tony, I remember, and even when he started at Holy Innocents, there was I'd come to all the games. And that was just, you kind of see the happiness and just the buy-in. It's almost like they enjoy it more when they're enjoying it. At least, that's a big thing, but kind of everything has shifted now to more of that strict focus on recruitment and stuff like that. So,
I think coming in from a different perspective, you guys have all coached both. I never have, but I did grow up in a house where I had a sister playing it and playing it at a high level. And I used to go to a lot of her games and a lot of, stuff with her. And it's just funny to me, I guess the differences, but yet the similarities. I think a lot of people focus on the differences, but there's a lot of similarities. And the one that I would point out is the want that you get from a player who really wants it, male or female, is pretty much, to me, the identical. They're focused. They want to win. They want to get better, et cetera, and willing to do whatever. And that's always neat to see, because I think some people don't think about that. And that's kind of what you guys were talking about. Some of the girls you taught, how even Tony says it's the highest basketball IQ he has. It was 2 girl players, not guy players, and he coached college for a little while. So I think that's kind of neat.
We weren't very good.
Hey, a couple of quick ones real quick, sir. I'm going to go off script just 1 second. I want to ask a couple of these real quick. Tony, we may even have some of these guys as guests at some point, but you played on a team, if I'm not mistaken, 6 guys got into some type of coaching, at LaGrange. What was in the water down there to get that done? I mean, that's kind of strange.
I think we still had a burning desire because we didn't win enough games as players that we wanted to go back out and coach. But when you look at those guys, Portier, Ralph, Bowles, Colt, Eisenhower,
and you, that's 6.
That's 6 right there.
Was there one more? I think it's
Dale Lomax coach too.
Dale, Kilo, yep.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Well, I think we all just kind of like hanging out with each other too.
Hey, it's that camaraderie that Kris was talking about before. But Tony, before you get into the story about these coaches, set the scene a little bit. So the people who are listening who don't know what LaGrange is or where it is or what this team was or a time frame. You played at LaGrange, school down on the south side and a little farther, right? So tell us about that.
So LaGrange is a small private school with about 1,000 students. So this was like before the internet. And I was getting recruited by Piedmont, LaGrange, smaller schools. And so I go down there, I go on a recruiting visit, I watch them play, and I'm in my head, I'm like, I can play here. Well, it turns out the year before I came, LaGrange was 0-33. So I didn't even know that. I mean, they didn't mention that on the recruiting visit. There was no internet to Google. So we get there. I think we win 8 games our first year, and we got better. And I think my last year we lost the conference championship, but played with all these guys, and they've really done a pretty good job in the last, 10, 15 years, made some national tournaments. But it's a small school. I call it like high school, but you live there. And we had an absolute blast, and, met some of the best friends I'll ever have, and my wife. And it was the whole experience was a lot of fun. Kris would come down and hang out sometimes.
Hey, some of my funnest weekends in college and after college, we're going down to the LaGrange homecoming and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time.
And tell us about this team and these teammates who all ended up coaching.
So we were getting our butt kicked early, but these guys that we just named, all dear friends of mine, and they studied the game. They all of those guys, I can say, worked really hard at their craft, and we may have been NCAA D3, but I think at the end, Porsche could just show up and get 35. He didn't have to. He didn't get after it too much in the gym. But Cole, the rest of us, Porsche was just better. I think we all worked on our craft and studied the game and talked the game and would watch basketball. And, it's interesting that all of us ended up coaching.
That's awesome, I think.
Yeah.
And that's probably what helped Kris some. Obviously, he had a dad. Obviously, he had all you guys that he was hanging out with on weekends. And then, Kris had to be one of the youngest coaches in the state. I know he was in Georgia Junior College when he was assistant with me. He was like, I always thought he's 19. He just said he was 21, so he's a little older.
Well, Kris, you had to have been the youngest head coach in Georgia.
I got my first win as I don't remember if it was first or second semester after you got tossed, and I had to coach the next game. But
oh yeah, that's with me.
Yeah, I either got my first head varsity win as an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old.
Back at Oak Mountain, really, when Tony got tossed.
Yeah.
Oak Mountain, what league is that? Is that Geisa?
Yeah. I remember Paul took a charge, and they called a block. I remember the play, and the referee, he said, well, he was moving, and when I say, Kris, I said he got his ass run over, and he goes, and I yelled it, and I got tossed just like that. I mean, I thought that was pretty quick. I've been ejected twice. I got ejected at Parkview. I mean, sometimes when I tell people I'm a AD at Holy Innocents, I can't even believe it half the time. I got ejected at Parkview in a JV game, JV basketball, because it's such a big deal. And I have this young. I mean, y'all know we can talk officials all day, right?
Yes.
This really young official. I mean, I'm probably 25. He's probably 23.
Oh no, sir. I know that official. Finish your story. Yeah, he's younger.
And I said, get him off of him or something like that. And he goes, bloop. I said, that's the best call you've made all day. Bloop. Tossed on that one right there. And
so you go. Let me interrupt real quick. So you go from getting tossed at Oak Mountain, getting tossed as a Parkview, JV assistant, and before that, playing at LaGrange, where you said you guys took no wins to 8 wins, and you were slowly working your way up to winning state championships. You had to appreciate it, right? I know your dad fought to win. He won so many games,
Yeah.
but never got to crown a state championship, and then you got it.
Yeah,
Talk a little bit
it
about
was.
that, because I mean that's unreal to me. Just hearing those stories, that makes me jump to that automatically.
Yeah, I mean it's been a fun journey, you know, and all of those places. I mean, back at Parkview, we had a blast. But to get to Holy Innocents, and I think when we were just a solid little team. You gotta say a solid team, making the state tournament, losing the first round until year 5. We made the Final Four, and then year 6, 7, and 8, and you know, since then, look, we built a product, and I can say it, that some kids wanted to come to our school. Great education. I mean, Kayla Pointer and Erica Cassell and Kayla Hubbard and Kennedy Suttle, you know, great students, and at Holy Innocents, we were able to offer, you know, a great education and a great athletic experience that attracted some really, really good players. And but I put the first year's team, the buy-in that 10 years ago that team had set the tone for what these girls are doing nowadays. It doesn't happen without those first 2 or 3 teams that just overachieved, and you know, we're barely making the state tournament, but we're a blast, an absolute blast to coach.
It's probably an easy answer here, Tony, but what are you prouder of? The state championship team that you coached, the state championship team that you watched win as the athletic director this year, or the Woodward team that wins state championship and you're the alum? How do you stack those up?
Good question, sir.
That's a great question. I think, honestly, a state title is just a memory. It is a great day. It's awesome, and but the body of work that went into all of those. I'll be honest with you, I love the one I coached, but to go back and wear my Woodward shirt with all my old teammates, watching our teammate Anthony Thomas coach, that was pretty darn special. I'm not going to lie. I mean, we all just, that was honestly, that may be the best one, honestly.
Wow. You said at the start, it's the memories, right?
Yeah.
And it brings people together. Hey, Kris, you've been quiet for a bit. We can't let you go until, and this is going to be a theme on Off the Beaten Path podcast, as we bring in people who have worked with Corey. You got to come up with a outstanding Corey story. And that's a new segment for us, a Corey story that is appropriate for the air. So what can you tell us about your time? Something you learned, something that he mentored you with?
Wasn't a lot of mentoring going on probably that year.
Yeah. So
technically the first assistant. I guess Joel Z was for 12 hours.
12 hours, but after that, this is a real first assistant.
All right, that's appropriate for the podcast. Okay.
I know the story he's gonna tell. I already know.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, that one is appropriate. All right. So, you know, it was real kind of interesting because even when I was, you know, coaching with Corey, I had an apartment on campus, but, you know, then I'd still kind of go hang out at Piedmont. I could always count on Corey. I knew if Amanda had to work, it was always hey, let's go out to eat tonight. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go to a party, but sure. But there was one time. Yeah. And so there's one time I get sent to pick up a player, and
they were gonna meet you halfway though, right?
Yeah. So I'm driving a 1995 Chevy Monte Carlo. So my car is not the most reliable. So a lot of times to start it, I had to have somebody turn the key while I banged the starter with a wrench. So obviously I couldn't take that on recruiting visits or anything. So I'm driving, I think, like a Truett McConnell van, and I drive all the way and pick up one player from Charlotte, drive back, Sean, drop him off. Second I get in, I've been on the road forever. And, Corey's like, oh, we need to go pick up Mikkel. And I don't say anything. I kind of just walk off. And he busts out the door right as like classes are changing. It's like 11:15, the hallway's full, and he's yelling at Dad, well, if you want to be a college coach, you better get used to this. And I'm like, I didn't say anything. I probably rolled my eyes or something. And it's one of the few times in my life where someone has spoken to me like that I did not immediately go back and get in their face. I'm just like, all right, and had to go. And then that's when the parent told me that they were going to meet me off the exit. And no, they did not. So I'll meet you halfway. And I'm like, where? And I was like, oh, okay, all the way to Cartersville. Thank you.
They were going to meet him halfway. They meant halfway out of their driveway, basically.
The things you do as a college coach. And Kris, what are some of the things that you do now? Tell us about your Southern Hoops and JUCO reports. What exactly are you trying to do? What's your why here with these organizations and these programs that you've got for kids?
And honestly, and what's weird is, for as much as I kind of, do with all that stuff, and kind of going back to, earlier, a lot of times I say we and stuff like that. There's a lot of times I'm in the gym, which it's good because I'm purposely socially awkward and I don't want to talk to people a lot of times, where a lot of people don't know who I am.
Hold on. Purposely socially awkward. I like it. Look at that one. He chooses. Yeah. So, please, people, just don't talk to me.
Yeah. And so, but it's really kind of, help a lot of those kids. So like if there's an event going on at maybe Wheeler, and there's an event going on at Holy Innocents, and there's going to be 150 media people at Wheeler on the baselines, and I might come over to the Big South Shootout on the first day. I try to, or I even go to North Forsyth, or I go to Denmark. I try to cover a lot of stuff that's not as covered by everybody else. And even in the junior college aspect of what I try to do is a lot kind of more media based. Really kind of show the coaches what a player can do on film, and use that to kind of promote players to get them to the next level. Even like this weekend, was working Sean Williams on the Radar Hoops event, try to get as much footage as possible. A parent buys a highlight and I'm like, look, your kid's been to 2 camps. Like, here, take your money back. I'll still do the highlight. Try to do as much as what I can to kind of get that out there. That's kind of what my why is now. It kind of gives me a purpose. It kind of gives me something, again, talk about that OCD, that focus, something to focus on. And that's a lot of that to me now is kind of breaking down film, and that's how I do a lot of my evaluations, and kind of that way. So,
well, and I think, Kris, your events are great. I think, and Corey, you can appreciate this. Every high school kid that wants to play at the next level needs to go and watch some games at one of Kris's JUCO events, at the team events, the jamborees, where they've got the coaches coaching them up, they're playing together, and you just see how many good players there are that are out there.
A bunch of high school coaches need to go to that event as well.
They do.
Why? Because of the level of play? Is that what you're saying? What else? Tell us so we can offer that advice up.
I think it's really hard, right? And for you to truly grasp, right? Like I didn't know anything about junior college before, I coached with Corey. And there's this belief. I mean, even my group that I was with at Piedmont, there were multiple players and, that could have been at Division I's or Division II's at that time. I think until you see it hands on, but there's this belief now because of, kids get mixtapes and they get 10,000 likes on Instagram, but the tape is of them tying their shoes and things like that. They think that, oh, well, I played against so-and-so and, they had 20, but I had 15 and they're a 5-star. I can definitely play Division I somewhere. That's like me saying I scored double digits against Lewis a couple times in travel basketball that I should have been playing at Mercer, because he went to the NBA, and that's just unreasonable. And I think sometimes even with the high school coaches, because they don't see that level. I remember even with Dad, when Dad was at Parkview, and they're literally losing 2 games a year. both to Norcross and like the Elite Eight. And he's like telling, oh, well, so-and-so, I don't understand, why she's not getting any calls back. And I said, Dad, she's really good for you for what you do.
Right.
But I cover all the travel stuff. Like, she does not shine on that stage. And so there's a difference between, I think, being coached by a really good high school coach and being put in a constant situation to be successful, and then being able to say, hey, that kid can then go play in the Peach Belt and, Division II, or they can play in a lower end of a Division I, or they can even play, hey, or play in, when I was at Piedmont, it was the GSAC at the time. And so I think until those coaches truly see that,
Parents need to see it too.
yeah, for sure. And so
That's great perspective, Kris. It really is. Yep. So
go ahead.
no, it's kind of like we did with Tony and clarifying the LaGrange story. Maybe some of our listeners don't exactly know what Southern Hoops and JUCO Report is. Tell us about that business and when it happens and how people plug in, please.
Yeah, and so JUCO Report, I started that first, which ironically it was called Southern Hoops Report when we first started. But
confusion.
we cover we have 3 jamborees in the year. I run the first one, then Corey Black runs the next 2, but we kind of cover them all under JUCO Report, and from the media standpoint with the video and the JUCO team previews and things like that, and then throughout the year. And then we host in April, we host 2 weekends when there's 2 open weekends. And then in July, when there was 2, we hosted 2. So it's individual events that come and play. But what's unique about ours, even though if they come individually, but if you have enough to have a full team, whether it's Corey, if it's, 9 or 10 guys, or Gordon or Shelton State, or any of those, or Hines, we just let them play together. Because, and sometimes some people don't like it, but if I'm a college coach and I think I want to get the best evaluation of a kid, I want to see them playing with their team, because if they're all split up individually, it's I got to get my mentality. But if I'm playing with other people I have a vested interest in, I'm going to make sure, hey, I know so-and-so, he's being watched by college coaches too. I'm going to put him in a situation to be successful, because that's my friend, that's my teammate. From the high school perspective in Southern Hoops Report, again, kind of going, ironically, y'all call it off the beaten path. I try to go to the places that aren't just covered as much. I run 3 to 4 events throughout the year, anywhere from 120 to, 150, 160 of those events. And then I do a bunch of media stuff, whether it's covering on the radar events, and then cover events throughout the year. So.
But that's exactly it, off the beaten path. That's why you're one of our first guests. You literally live off the beaten path and bring a lot of those players to light. So thanks, man. Appreciate you sharing that.
All right, well, let's go. We're going to do to finish it up here. We're going to do a little new thing we do. We're going to call it the quick hitters, and we're going to ask some questions, let both of you kind of answer, maybe just one of you, however you want to do it. And me and Sir will kind of alternate going back and forth. I'm going to start it with what's most dear to my heart, which is my belly. Okay, favorite place we ate in Cleveland. Kris, favorite place we ate up in Cleveland, Georgia.
Oh man, that's easy. Glenda's.
Oh, nice. We
drove by it. I told you we drove by it the other day, and my wife goes, "Oh my God, why are there so many people at that restaurant right now?" And I looked over. Of course, I'm looking at my phone if I'm not driving. I was like, "Oh, it's because it's Glenda's. It's amazing." So.
Your favorite place you ate down in LaGrange, Tony?
Jimmy's. It's all you can eat Sunday buffet fried chicken. We would wake up really tired for some reason, but then we shower up and put on our church clothes like we just went to church.
Nice.
And we would go to lunch.
Blend in. I like it. All right, Sir, we're alternating up. Your question.
We are, but I'm still laughing about that. You put on your church clothes at 12:30. Nice. Well played. All right. Kris, what is your best moment memory as a player?
Again, I was good for maybe 6 to 9 points a game and things like that. I mean, I think just the overall kind of experience. I mean, some of those big games, I mentioned Lewis Williams, playing South Gwinnett and the gym's packed and people are calling me daddy's boy. And, I hit a couple threes and I think I did something stupid like point to the cheerleaders. I was dating one of them at the time. So,
Nice.
just those. But again, my kind of envision what I saw basketball again is the memories outside of what happens on the court.
Okay.
Those guys, and one, what I want to touch base on, we haven't mentioned, our mother at all, but what I think we kind of learned from both, our mom and our dad, and might be a little unique in this because Woodward was maybe more spread out, but there was probably not a Friday or Saturday night that at my house, kind of once we got to Shiloh, there were not multiple people there from our team, even if I didn't want them to be there. I remember, Nick and Ricardo be like, "Hey, we're coming over tonight." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Well, your mom invited us over." And so, staying up and playing NFL Blitz and kind of just that camaraderie and kind of being with those guys. My funnest times are diving on the floor during a game and things like that. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I probably have more memories watching Tony play growing up whenever it's hitting all those threes, was it versus Westover and stuff like that, and kind of being at those games than maybe as individually when I played. So
Gotcha. Well, these are supposed to be quick hitters with quick answers, but we can definitely take a pause and talk some more. No, about your mom, right? The coach's wife and the mom of two more coaches. It's a struggle sometimes. So big respect to her. Tony, you want to put a word in for your mom?
She's the best, and like Kris just said, our door was always open to any of our teammates or friends, and she would always feed us. And being a coach's wife is not easy. I know we all got one, but yeah, big shout out to mom.
There you go. And back to quick hitters, Tony, what's your best moment as a player, your best memory as a player on the court?
I think Kris just kind of hit it junior year in the Albany Civic Center versus Westover. I came off the bench and hit 5 threes in that game. In what was a very hostile environment. That was a fun game, and that sent us to the Final Four.
Nice.
I've got a good one here. First part's for Kris. Better place you lived, the courts in Cleveland at Truett McConnell, or you were living in Carrollton. Who was that was renting your house?
Tim Criswell.
Yes, Coach Criswell, a legend. We had to throw out Criswell. So what was the worst living condition? We don't want to kill Criswell, so I guess we got to go with the courts maybe, but I don't know. What was it?
We had
Tim has since renovated the duplex, though.
Oh, okay. He upgraded after he won more games since then. He got a little more.
Yeah, I think probably the better living experience was the courts at Truett, because
Really?
we had a gas heater that would leave soot on the walls, and we would write each other messages. Sometimes it would catch us on fire, and I remember even when I know this is quick, but the heater was only in the living room. So once somebody got on the leather couch in the living room in the winter, you didn't get up no matter what. So there were a lot of times where Alicia would be sleeping on the couch, and I think me and Tony would both be sleeping on the floor. So
I love it. All right, Tony, your turn here. All right. Crazier coach to work for, your dad or Tim Watkins? Who was crazy? That's two Watkins, one not related, of course, but still.
Definitely Dad. In all the best ways. He threw a boxing one time against Coach Andrews in a scrimmage game, and I thought they were about to go to blows after the game. It was in a scrimmage.
I love it. Cyril, go ahead. I got one more after this, Cyril.
All right, a couple more questions. Let's go academics. What's the last book that you read? Kris?
Oh, me? I own a lot of books. I don't finish a lot of books. I've currently started trying to read The Alchemist again. I think I've started about 6 times. I never finished it. But and then, well, no, actually, what I do more now, I listen to books on tape. So I just finished the Malcolm Gladwell book, Talking to Strangers, on tape.
Tony, how about you? Last book you've read or listened to?
I just finished The Coffee Bean. John Gordon. He's a great author, very inspirational. Now, a lot of his books start to sound the same, when you read multiple ones, but that's the last one.
Good
All right,
to
my
know.
question might have kind of been personal questions. I'm going to keep with that. Working the old Superstars camp, okay, who was the craziest coach? Who was the craziest coach? And both of y'all can answer that one, and there's a second part after it. Who was the craziest coach in the camp? I mean, there was a lot of crazy guys back in those days.
I mean, Rick Moore back in the day now. I mean, he would be all over him. And what was the guy? He was there forever. The old guy at Carver Columbus.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but we had beat them behind the curtain in that old parquet floor gym. And he said some choice words to them, and they just went to the track and went to stadiums after a game. That was pretty intense.
I like it. All right, so Kris, did you have one that you thought was crazy? Now you can go with some different experience because you were the assistant also with me, and we had a bunch of teams up there at Truett. So some of the more modern day guys, getting closer to modern day. We're still a little old school. It's been.
I'm not going to say the name of the school, but there was one time where I had to coach the team when we were at Truett because the head coach fell asleep under the acorn tree. And so I drove them over to White County High School and coached them because their coach was asleep. I'm pretty sure we won, but
does it count on your resume? Does it count as a win on your resume?
Yeah,
they all count.
They all count. I got you. I got Ken Ross. Was he ever at any of those camps? Because he was another guy.
God rest his soul. I remember they beat us out my senior year. So it's the summer. I'm actually reffing. That's how bad the refs were at the camp. So I'm working after high school. Ken out behind the gym smoking a cigarette. And he says, "Who beat you in your last high school game?" I'm like, you did, Coach. You did.
he said the same thing to me at Clayton State my senior year. Came up and sat next to me, and I was like, "Oh, well, we just beat y'all by 20, so it's okay, Coach." So.
Oh, I love it. I love it. He is we used to call him the legend. That was his nickname. And it was self-given. That made it even better.
Yep.
And, rest in peace. He's no longer with us. Great guy. Great stories. Definitely thought a lot of himself, though. Has a lot of coaches do. All right. So that's some good stuff. Last one, Cyril, you wanted me to ask a little music question here, so I'll ask it. All right. Give us your favorite who either your favorite band or favorite group or favorite person you listen to, or who's in your rotation right now that you're listening to.
Or favorite concert you've been to.
Yeah, let's go concert, sir. I like that. We'll go concert. Best concert you've been to. I know both you guys go a lot or used to.
Yeah, I mean, we grew up on Outkast, so Outkast, Big Boy and Andre, they're always in the rotation. But my favorite concert is Kenny Chesney, and I've seen him a couple times, but that's my favorite one.
I like the being versatile there. I like that. Yeah. What you got, Kris?
Yeah, but that's what I was saying. We actually bought that AT Aliens album together at the Turtle Music in Jonesboro.
Ooh, Turtles. That was a spot.
We checked into School 8 too, I think.
Yeah.
I think you had to let me borrow the $12 for the CD.
Yeah. Me and my wife go to a ton of concerts. I think, honestly, just the coolest experience. We went and saw Dead and Company at Lakewood. I think there were over 100,000 people there the night before I ran an event, which was interesting. We go to a bunch of stuff at Variety Playhouse. I think, we just, same as Tony, like music, love music. I randomly am listening to a whole lot of Sugarland right now for some reason. I know it's just real catchy. But I listen. I'm not whether again it's more if it's not the '90s rap. I listen to Father John Misty, things like that. So
Corey uses the word versatile. It happens on the court. It happens with the selection of music. And you were talking about the legendary coaches. We just had a couple of legends on the podcast here, Corey. And referenced the real legend, Dad. All right. So I think we're coming to a close. Corey, any final thoughts?
I just think, man, one thing I've noticed, we've had two brothers on back to back, and both very different, but both very similar. And the similar part to me is, just the love for the game and for the experiences you get for the game. And even though, with Kevin and Justin and, different paths that they've taken and they didn't have a dad in it, still kind of said some of the same things along those lines. I think that's neat to see. And hopefully the more we do this, I think that'll be something that's going to be, pretty easy to find in everybody. We do it because we love it in coaching. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in the wins and losses, we forget that we love doing this. We love ball. We love helping kids out. And that's what they're both doing still now, even though they're not quote coaching, they're still helping kids and they still love ball. And I think it's neat to see it, So I enjoyed y'all, man. I loved it. I loved it.
Good times.
It is. Yep. Enjoyed it here too. The memories and the people, that's what it's all about. Kris, Tony, thanks for being on with us. Any thoughts from you guys to wrap it up here?
No, just thanks for bringing us. But this is the type of camaraderie that I think is missing today. It's not as frequent. Our little group that we text on, the stories that we tell, it's not as prevalent, and I don't think so with coaches that are coaching today.
And I think that kind of goes back, we talk about just the good old days. And I feel like now everything is connection based. It's like, if I want to talk to you, and I don't want to just talk about basketball, and I feel like now everything is so basketball driven. And it's not like, yeah, that's great. Like, I do basketball 22 hours out of the day. Back when I was single, that doesn't mean the one time I want to talk to you, I want to talk about basketball. I want to go have a beer. I want to talk about movies. I don't want to talk about politics, but like I want to have a fun time kind of outside of what the game is. And I think just now everything is so almost business focused, kind of like Tony said, it's almost about the game. What offense would you run? What defense would you run? As opposed,
I want to hear more about the crazy stories that happen at camp.
Yes.
I agree.
Everybody needs to work camp at all levels. There's no question about it. Well, again, Dr. Kris Watkins and Athletic Director Tony Watkins, thanks for joining us on today's episode of Off the Beaten Path. For those of you still listening along, make sure you're following on Instagram, Off the Beaten Path Podcast, or Twitter, the Off the Beaten Path with a little underscore. And we really appreciate people listening in for these stories. That's what it's all about.
Yes, I love it. We seem to always evolve around food and camp. I'm starting to catch the theme there. But hey, man, this is a show for those who want to be a coach, those who used to be a coach, those who are coaches, those who follow coaches, and those who hire and fire coaches.